You don't explode when a marriage ends. You erode, slowly, silently, until the only thing left of you is what others chose to leave behind. That's how it happened. Not with a scream or a slammed door, but with silence. The kind that seeps into your bones. The kind that makes you forget the sound of your own voice. My name is Linda Marshall. I'm 60 years old, and if you'd asked me a year ago who I was, I would have struggled to answer. Wife, mother, homemaker, sure. But me? That part got lost somewhere along the way. I was married to the same man for 32 years. We built a house, raised 2 children, and on paper, we had a good life. The kind of life that makes people nod politely and say, "You're lucky." And maybe I was, once. But as the years went on, the house stayed full while I slowly disappeared. Not all at once, just in pieces. I gave up a budding career in graphic design to stay home with the kids, something I chose freely back then. I made their Halloween costumes by hand, packed lunches with sweet notes, stayed up through fevers and teenage heartbreaks. I supported my husband's career, followed him through 2 relocations, and made sure birthdays and Christmases were always magical, even when money was tight. He used to leave me little notes, pick wildflowers from the yard and leave them on the kitchen counter. He used to look at me. But over time, those looks became glances, then nods, then barely even that. The kids grew up, moved out, and only reached out when they needed something. And my husband, Robert, once the man who couldn't fall asleep without touching my hand, now went days without acknowledging I was in the room. It all came to a head on a Thursday evening in early June, our anniversary, 32 years. I had set the table like I used to when the kids were young, pulled out the good dishes, made his favorite lemon chicken. I even lit candles, not because I thought it would fix anything, but because I still remembered how. He walked in late, shrugged off his jacket and sat down without a word, scrolled through his phone while I served the food. We ate in near silence, and just as I was about to bring out the small chocolate cake I'd made, he looked up. Not lovingly, not apologetically, just indifferent. "You're not fun anymore, Linda. I don't even know who you are." I froze, not because I didn't expect it, but because I did. I'd seen it in his eyes for years, heard it in the way he sighed when I asked about his day, felt it in the way he pulled his arm away in bed. I smiled, not because it was funny, but because something inside me finally shifted, like the last grain of sand dropping in an hourglass. I realized then, he hadn't seen me in years. Maybe the kids hadn't either. And maybe, just maybe, I had stopped seeing myself too. That night, I washed the dishes alone, blew out the candles, sat in the quiet kitchen and stared at a wall that had once held our kids' artwork, but was now just beige and bare. And I thought, if I vanished tomorrow, who would even notice? But here's the thing, I didn't vanish. I started to wake up. If this story feels like yours, stay with me until the end. And if you believe women deserve to be seen, share this video, subscribe, and leave me a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. You matter. It wasn't just what he said that night. It was what he didn't say in the days that followed. No apology, no conversation, no acknowledgement that something had cracked wide open between us. He went on like always. Work, golf, emails after dinner, scrolling through his phone as if I weren't even sitting across the room. Like I was an outdated app he never got around to deleting. That's when the noticing began. At first it was little things. His phone never left his side. The password had changed. He stepped outside to take certain calls now, voice lowered, laughter muffled behind the sliding glass door. He came home freshly shaved on random Thursdays, and there was a new scent on his shirts, something citrusy and sharp, a perfume I didn't own. The first real proof came by accident. I went to throw a jacket in the laundry and found a receipt in the pocket, a seafood bistro I'd never heard of. 2 entrees, a bottle of wine, a Tuesday night. He said he'd worked late. I didn't confront him, not yet. Something in me had gone quiet, not numb, not weak, just still, like a lake before a storm. Instead, I began documenting, quietly, like I was curating an exhibit titled, "How a Wife Disappears." I started checking the bank statements, restaurant names I didn't recognize, gas stations 2 hours away. I checked our shared calendar, his office hours, even the GPS history in his car. Turns out if you know where to look, people tell on themselves without saying a word. But the betrayal wasn't limited to him. My children, grown, capable, brilliant, had also stopped seeing me. They came over to drop off laundry, pick up mail, borrow the second car. They called when they were stressed, when their apartments flooded, when their relationships failed, but not once, not a single time did either of them ask how I was doing. Daniel left dirty dishes in the sink like I was still his dorm mother. Emily brought wine but stayed glued to her phone. They told me about their bosses, their yoga instructors, their dry shampoo woes, but my life, my feelings, not even a blip on their radar. I had become background, convenient, predictable, expected. I became the wallpaper, I wrote in my journal one night. Beautiful once, then background, then ignored. That sentence sat with me for days. Then came the receipt, a folded slip of paper wedged between two old credit card statements in his desk drawer. A weekend stay at the Magnolia House Inn in Savannah. Deluxe suite, 2 nights, champagne on arrival. He hadn't taken me to Savannah since our 20th anniversary, and even then we stayed with friends. This wasn't a work trip. This was intentional, intimate, planned. That was the last time I cried. Not because of the cheating, but because I realized I had been erased long before another woman came along. The affair wasn't the betrayal. The betrayal was how easy it was for him to forget I was ever part of his life. So I stopped hoping, and I started planning. I pulled out the old file box from the back of my closet, the one with our will, birth certificates, and a faded copy of the prenuptial agreement he made me sign 32 years ago. Back then, I had rolled my eyes, laughed. "You're the one with nothing," I teased. But he was so sure, so smug. What he never realized, or maybe forgot, is that I kept that piece of paper, and tucked inside that paper was a clause he likely hadn't even read. If he ever cheated, everything reverted to me. The house, the savings, the assets, all mine. It was like finding a secret key to a door I didn't know I'd one day need to open. From that moment on, I reclaimed my power, not in grand gestures, but in quiet shifts. I stopped making his morning coffee just the way he liked it. I cooked what I wanted for dinner, not what he expected. I went to bed early. I stopped asking about his day. I stopped filling the silence between us with words he didn't want to hear. I began to observe him the way you might study an old photograph. Familiar, but distant, faded in all the places that used to feel bright. He didn't notice the change at first. Or maybe he did, and he just assumed I'd snap back into place like I always had. But this time, I was done snapping. This time, I wasn't preparing for a fight. I was preparing for freedom. It started with toast, buttered toast to be exact. On a calm Saturday morning, with sunlight pouring into the kitchen like nothing in the world had gone wrong. I poured him a cup of coffee and placed the plate in front of him like I had hundreds, maybe thousands of times before. Then, casually, I said the words that would become the soft detonation beneath the surface of everything he thought he controlled. "I've been thinking," I said, watching the steam rise between us. "Maybe you should take a little time for yourself. Just get away. Clear your head." He blinked, fork in hand, mid-chew. "Like a break?" I nodded gently. "You said things have felt off. Maybe a change of scenery would help. I think some space could be good." The irony was delicious. He'd already created that space, hadn't he? Quietly, secretly, with late nights and perfume that wasn't mine. But I didn't say that. I didn't accuse or beg or cry. I simply offered him the escape he'd been crafting in the shadows. And he lit up. Not for me, but for the idea of freedom without guilt. "You'd be okay with that?" he asked, cautious. "Of course," I said, smiling. "I want you to find your joy again." He believed me. Men like Robert always do, because they've spent years convincing themselves we don't notice, that we don't know. But I knew, and I had a plan. Over the next 3 days, I played the part of the selfless wife like it was second nature. I printed fake reservations for a charming boutique hotel in Cartagena. I mocked up emails from non-existent tour companies. I even included a fake yoga and wine tasting retreat. The hotel didn't exist. The tour numbers were dead ends. The car service confirmation was just an image from Google and a phone number that led to a florist in Idaho. I booked the cheapest one-way flight I could find. No checked luggage, no travel insurance, and then, like a cherry on top, I printed a packet of everything. "Just in case," I said, tucking it into his carry-on. He thought I was helping. He never saw the trap. And yes, he brought her. I'd seen her in a photo once, one of those accidental airdrop slips when his phone connected to the home Wi-Fi. Young, glossy, the kind of woman who laughed too hard at mediocre jokes and called him babe in cursive. Let her have him, I thought. Let her experience the full reality of a man who vanishes behind a phone during dinner, who leaves socks on the floor and never refills the ice tray. Let her see what I had spent decades swallowing. The morning they left, I kissed his cheek at the airport drop-off. He promised to bring back clarity. I promised nothing. Then I went home, turned off my phone completely. SIM card removed, notifications silenced, accounts logged out. I was done receiving messages from ghosts. I walked back into our house, my house, and something had shifted. It didn't feel like a tomb anymore. It felt like a blank canvas. I had already packed a small suitcase for myself. At noon, I boarded a cruise ship heading into the Caribbean. 7 days, adults only. No internet, no news, just yoga at sunrise, painting classes at noon, jazz by starlight. I stood on the balcony as the ship pulled away from the shore and whispered into the wind. He said I was boring, so I gave him the adventure he asked for. Meanwhile, in Colombia, Robert and his glossy companion were learning just how fragile a fantasy could be. There was no reservation under his name. The front desk didn't have him listed. The tour company didn't pick up. The spa didn't exist. His texts came in clusters while I lounged by the pool. Can you double-check the email? Linda, something's not right. They said there's no record of us. I didn't respond. I didn't even read them in real time. I read them later, sipping wine as the sun dipped low over the water. Then I deleted them, one by one. By day 3, he cracked. Maya's upset. This is embarrassing. Can you just fix it? I smiled at the name. Maya, of course. Let her taste the discomfort of being plan A for a man who only ever thinks of himself. Back home, I returned before him. I spent the next 2 days quietly, methodically packing up everything he owned. I boxed it all. Shirts, books, golf trophies, business cards, leftover chargers, even the graying toothbrush he never replaced. 9 boxes in total. I labeled each one plainly. Winter clothes, office junk, the things you took for granted. Then I scheduled a moving truck and stacked the boxes neatly on the porch. When he finally returned, sweaty, sunburned, half wild from the chaos I had carefully curated, he didn't look like the man who'd left me. His suitcase had a broken wheel. His hair was flat. His voice cracked when he said my name. I met him at the door, but I didn't open it fully. You said you didn't know who I was, I said, voice calm. Let me introduce you to the woman who stopped waiting. He stared at the boxes, then at me, then back again. You can't be serious. I tilted my head. No, Robert, I'm finally serious. The new place wasn't large. Just 2 bedrooms, a bright kitchen with yellow tile, and a small balcony that caught the morning light just right. But it was mine. Every cabinet, every drawer, every corner breathed a kind of quiet I hadn't known I needed. No echoes of slammed doors, no cold silences between strangers who used to be in love, just birdsong and sunlight, and the hum of possibility. I named my Etsy store Sketched Soul. It wasn't fancy, just a few pieces at first. Landscapes, abstract emotion pieces, scenes from memory. I hadn't drawn in years, not since the kids were small. I used to sketch birthday banners and PTA flyers. But this time, the lines weren't for praise. They were for me. Once a week, I teach a class at the community center. Art for women who've forgotten how to take up space. Some are widowed, some divorced, some just tired. We sit in a circle with our pencils and stories. We talk or we don't. The silence is welcome, not feared. We sketch our way back to ourselves. It was a few weeks after the move when Emily and Daniel came over. They looked around the condo, unsure. Emily lingered near the window. Daniel stood by the bookshelf like he couldn't quite find his footing. Finally, Emily asked, "Why didn't you ever tell us how bad it was?" I paused, setting down my sketch pad. "Because I wanted you to have a happy childhood," I said softly, "even if it cost me mine." Neither of them responded right away, but in their silence, I heard something I hadn't before, understanding. A month later, I received a letter, handwritten, no return address, but I recognized the script immediately. Robert. "Linda," it began, "I never really understood how much damage I caused until I had to sit in it. Your silence was louder than any punishment. Thank you for setting me free, too." I folded it carefully and slid it into the back of my sketchbook, not to revisit, but to release. Because closure doesn't always come with apology. Sometimes it comes in cardboard boxes and morning sun on your own kitchen floor. A woman doesn't always get her justice in court. Sometimes she gets it in silence, in small reclaimings, in the quiet act of choosing herself. My name is still Linda Marshall, but I've changed in every way that matters. Thank you for listening to my story. If it moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear, "You can start over. You are not invisible, and you are stronger than you know."